episode 3 of the Beatidudes podcast. I'm TJ, and unfortunately, James will not be joining us today.
I'm filling in his shoes for today. My name's Topher. I'm from San Diego. I'm really happy to be here.
30 minutes outside of Temecula, so James 2.0. As you say, your name is James or?
Yes. James, but my middle name is Topher. No, my name's Topher.
Yeah, James, unfortunately, we went hiking in the Grand Canyon and he fell in and hasn't hiked out yet. We've been waiting.
Rest in peace.
No, James had something come up today, and then we have with us today, we also have Daniel.
It's good to be here. My name's Daniel.
Daniel-san.
I'm here. My name's
Daniel-sama.
My name's Daniel.
So, today's topic is the idea of self-love. What does it mean to have self-love? What does it mean to not have self-love? The alternative, self-pity. And kind of what can we do about that? Like, what can we do to have a healthy amount of respect for ourselves and in the way that we go about our lives? So let's go ahead and jump right into it.
All right, let's jump right in. Can you clarify the difference between self-love and self-pity?
So self-love, I mean, did you want to talk about this? Because you had your binder ready?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not binder ready, but we've been going over a lot of the things in, like, DBT with dialectical behavioral therapy is, like, learning mindfulness skills. And then, so we've been learning a little bit about reasonable mind versus your emotional mind and just how to balance that. Because there's a quote, I forget if it was like some singer who said it, but he said that, like, creativity without concrete is insanity, but concrete without creativity is death. And so it's just like trying to balance your reason and your emotions. And so I really look at this as, like, because it's self-love and self-pity, and if we just take that one step further to the outside, we can call self-love self-indulgence, and we can call self-pity self-flagellation, because that's where it comes into, like, a lot of in my life, and how, like, I kind of practice self-love or I practice self-pity is it doesn't look like love or pity, it looks like indulgence or flagellation. And so the indulgence can be super harmful, and then flagellation can be super harmful as well. But it's a very fine
That's a big
line.
word. Could you define that?
Those fellas back in, like, the 14th century when the plague was big, whipping themselves. That's self-flagellation.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, gotcha.
Yeah. So, like, a harmful asceticism. So
I see.
Yeah.
So, like, kind of like, bullying yourself in a way back into...
Bullying yourself, yeah, that's a really good way.
Submission or something.
Yeah.
Interesting. I would say self-love is the ability to be kind to yourself, and when you fail, or maybe when things aren't going your way, your ability to handle the problems of life and regain a sense of identity. For me, that, similar to what you're saying, is when I'm getting into a, like, perfectionist type of tendency, I will be really hard on myself. I'll be hard on, like, oh my gosh, I need to, like, lose that extra 5 pounds, or, like, little stuff like, oh my gosh, I threw my bag in the car and my water bottle went flying and spilled everywhere, and I'm just, like, raging now because oh my gosh, like, nothing in my life is going right. So that's, like, when things aren't going our way, it's easy to, like, cast a certain persona, maybe, like, cast something on our character that makes us, like, sensitive to anger or sensitive to just indulging, like you're saying. And so I think self-love is just kind of working from a place of, like, hey, I'm not perfect. I need to accept exactly where I'm at and own up to the things that I did fail on, but it's not gonna like impact me in a way that is gonna be mood altering or day altering in terms of like and I think this is highly tied into men's like struggle with purity, because when we're not able to like own our problems and accept exactly what's going on, we're not able to love ourselves because we're denying it, and we go into these type of bad habits, whether it's like overeating, obsessive working out, which is real, honestly. Pornography, masturbation, whatever it is. That's kind of what I was initially thinking on the topic.
I think self-love is really a balancing act, because you have to look on yourself from the outside and in and see that, maybe things aren't going right, but I'm going to work hard to fix myself.
Yeah.
I think if you're too hard on yourself, you're going to be miserable. But I think if you tap into this comfort mode your whole life, because I think where I lacked when I was growing up is I was super comfortable, and this message of self-love kind of started in our generation, and it's like, it's good to love yourself, but it's bad when you're not meeting the expectations that you want.
Yeah. It's I had a really good thought for this. Self-love.
I was trying to say something.
I'm so sorry. What were you saying?
I was saying about how it's kind of unhealthy if you have too much of it, and like, for example, in the real world, you guys like know Lizzo, right?
Oh yeah.
And she's
Lizzo.
like, it's like she's a great gal, but
new man on the Minnesota Vikings. Down. Sorry.
No, but it's like, does everyone look at themselves internally, and I guess fat shaming is like kind of a part of it, and it's like, what's really healthy for you? Are you gonna be happy, but you're gonna be in the state of like being overweight for your whole life?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, when you see that you're loving yourself too much, you kind of have to snap out of it and be like, okay, what's really going on here?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting dilemma, because there are some people who legitimately, with their body's chemistry, it's not the fact that they're eating too much food or they're not working out enough. Yeah. It's that they eat a normal amount of food and put on weight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to distinguish whether it's like, okay, are you somebody who has a metabolism thing, or are you like just put on weight, or is it like you legitimately just
you're okay with
you're just kind of complacent with like whatever health you're in, which I see what you're saying.
And that's kind of where like I kind of want to segue into our next topic is, is bullying good for you? So I think
no, because
because I think when you're I recently I used to have like an Instagram account where I like ran like just pictures of myself, and in that I had a picture of me and my friend like shirtless, and he has like a way better body than me just because
hold on, better body.
Yeah.
All bodies are like.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But standards wise, socially, people, if you have this, tapered to yourself, or, people won't say that it's like it's the golden standard, but it kind of is.
It conforms to a certain ideal that we see in the movies. Six-pack abs.
Like, oh, look at this guy, he's the king, or
Sculpted.
He's the CEO of the world, and basically what I'm trying to say is, they one of my like old friends was just commented fat, and I was like, you know what? I can see that you're the only one that wants to tell me the truth, and I honor you for that. It's like, who's who's really looking out for you, you know? Because you can live in this world, you can live in this like reality world, where like you're like good with your body, but also I understand that can be toxic if you're not, you know, if you're you know, striving to be that like 2 percentile, 0% fat, you know, but
yeah.
It's a good push where bullying kind of comes in, where self-love kind of tricks you.
I think maybe the point that I would make is that when people are honest with you and they tell you what they see, it means that they're willing to have a real relationship with you. Because like you can't have a real relationship without honest feedback, honesty, without trust. And there's a line, because you're not going to tell somebody you care about every little thing that you're bothered by.
Yeah.
But one story that happened to me this week, actually. So this past week I was snowboarding and I bit off a little bit more than I could chew. I went down a blue, and it's like my 3rd time snowboarding. And I was actually doing really well, but snowboards aren't really made for catwalks. And so my buddy, we get down half of this blue, and so we like hit this catwalk, and I'm like, shoot, I was going to go the other way down just the regular run. And so I followed him. Sure enough, 10 seconds later, I'm going like 25 miles an hour down a catwalk, and I'm like, if I go left, I hit trees and a sheer drop-off cliff. Or if I go right, I might hit a rock or like something hard. And so I go right, and I try to fall and just smacked into it like a rock really hard. Anyway, the rest of the week I've been like really kind of useless in terms of like I don't want to participate socially, and I'm like showing up late to stuff. Like I'm just moving super slow. And one of my teammates came up to me and was just like, TJ, are you okay? Like you've been like non-existent today. Which at first sounds really bad. I'm like, non-existent? Like that's just like, I feel roasted. But after thinking about it, I realized that my teammate in the situation, she was, the person was attuned to my emotional state. And they were attuned to like what was going wrong. And like I'm saying is like, real relationship involves honesty. But it also involves the moment something goes wrong, we actually really desire to be known in a way that like, oh, something's off. Like this person's upset. And she could see that in me, that I was off my game. I mean, nobody likes to be told like, hey dude, you're off your game. Yeah. But going back to your comment, is like when somebody maybe makes an honest, like straight up savage comment on Instagram and you're not in a place to receive it, part of you still thinks like, maybe they're right. Maybe I do need to like work on this thing before I post my next photo.
Yeah.
The problem is that directly impacts your ability to accept and love yourself. Because you make your happiness dependent on solving that one thing. And you get into like kind of like people pleasing in the sense of what I do and what I'm aiming for in life is to like get likes, to get applause. And that's what's so dangerous about social media, is that like our bodies are used as a certain product for like our social status and our clout. And I guess like, yeah, that's not cool, just because like it's like, it's good that we can communicate with each other so rapidly, but we've kind of like commoditized the human body in a way.
And it kind of cuts off that like that human aspect, because when you just look at somebody for their body, you kind of just you're putting them in certain spots where you're like, oh, they're fat, they're lazy, you know, but they could be like somebody really kind, and you know, they could have a great soul. So
would you rather have them comment kind?
Yes, kind.
Great soul.
You're a gentleman. Okay, I also have a question for you guys. How do you... So, I met this girl.
Okay.
And, basically, how do you tell somebody that their breath stinks? in the nicest way.
I did not expect that to go that way.
Yeah. I thought.
You say, "Hey girl, you need some self-love," and then you hand her a stick of extra.
Okay. Yeah.
Or 5, depending on what you like.
I don't know. I think depending on how good the relationship you have with her is, you could just like walk up and say like, "Your breath stinks all the time, and I think you should brush your teeth." And like she might be receptive to that. Because like if TJ walked up to me, I'd be like, "You're right. I forgot to brush my teeth this morning." Sorry, TJ. I just ate peanut butter too.
Anyways.
That's a good question, because, yeah, friendship requires honesty, and when your friends aren't honest with you, like, hey, you have something in your teeth, or like, your breath stinks.
Your tag's out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your tag's out. This happened to me last week. I was like, oh man, I forgot to put on deodorant, which is like, big mistake. And I told a friend about it. I was like, don't you hate it when you like leave the house and you're like, shoot, I didn't put deodorant on deodorant. He's like, yeah, it's good as long as it's not like everyday thing. That's true, because like, when you don't do something consistently, it becomes like, oh, the person with X.
B-O.
B-O. Sports.
It's in the game. And I kind of feel bad reflecting on my high school friendships because, you know, there's one of my guy friends, and I don't know where kind of the smell comes from, but he kind of had like a mildewy smell to him, and it's like everyone kind of acknowledged it,
like old fridge.
kind of like a little moldy. You know, you guys know what mold smells like. It's just like, it's not the worst smell, but it definitely is like prominent. And where I kind of regret is, you know, I'd talk about it with my friends, but I would never tell him. And I think that's where I lack as a man, is just that honesty, that brute honesty, because, you know, his what is it called when you wash clothes? When you put it in
detergent washer.
When you put it in the washer, you know, does it dry right, or does it? You know, is there something in the washer? So it's just you need to be on your toes.
It's a strange situation.
This has been a long time coming.
You gotta live your life.
I think I really gotta get it out, because
send him the episode.
But we need to get back to self-love.
Self-love.
Okay.
What's love? What is love?
I had something. I had a friend in high school who they would come up to me and they'd be like, they'd put their arm on your shoulder, look you in the eye, and be like, TJ, or whoever, TJ, I'm telling you as a friend, and you think like they're gonna tell me to like back off, or like that I've offended them in some way. Like, I'm telling you as a friend, your fly's down. Or like, I'm telling you as a friend, like I'm telling you as a friend, your breath smells really bad, and you need some gum. It's kind of the perfect way to do it.
It is.
If you're going with like the funny route, that's a great way to do it.
You got to be aggressive, you know.
I'm telling you this as a friend, but
so should we be aggressive with self-love? Look at ourselves in the mirror.
Maybe
better.
Maybe comedy is one avenue.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I'm telling you as a friend, your family doesn't use a dryer, and I don't know why.
There's something wrong with your dryer.
There's something wrong. Not with you. Not with
you. It's just your clothes are a little mildewy. Thank you for listening.
This has been Talking Tophers. Talking to Topher.
TED Talk.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, self-love, self-pity.
Yeah.
What are the difference? And I think the reason that I don't think self-love is the answer to self-pity, because the culture, I don't want to, generalize and say the culture too much, because I think people say that. They're like, who are we talking about?
Right.
But I mean, pop psychology, let's say.
Oh, yeah.
Treats self-love as an antidote to self-pity, almost.
Yes.
Because it's like, poor me, poor this, I'm going through this tough time, and so they're like, oh, you just need encouragement. You just need
to love yourself.
You just need more of like affirmation. And like that's not necessarily true, because it doesn't involve you facing the deep-seated whatever issue it is that's underlying the pity, or like what's underlying the discomfort or pain that you're experiencing. So like, yeah, for me, I'm torn about the self-image thing with your Instagram, the guy who's commented fat, because I don't think anybody should call another person fat, like straight up, because that's just uncalled for.
Yeah.
Especially if it's on social media, because that's just like so cowardly. It's like what did that guy? He probably didn't even put a period on it, just fat, and then like.
Yeah, but I liked it. I mean, I think. This guy, he was kind of always the person that would say the thing.
Ruffle people's feathers.
Yeah, he was always the rough
pot stirrer.
Yeah,
he stirs the pot.
You know, when every like the shootings were happening, he would be the guy with the like NRA flag.
Oh yeah, I know the guy. Yeah.
At the speeches, so you know, the pot stirrer will stir the pot, and I think you know. I wouldn't say those guys are healthy, because, you know, what if they use their power for good?
Yeah.
But, I don't know. You can't control everybody.
Yeah, some people just say stuff to get
attention.
Some kind of rile out of people, get attention. Yeah. What I was going to go towards the idea that, like, this happens to a lot of guys. Freshman year of college, they show up, and they want to be noticed, and they want to be more than they are. So they hit the weights like every day for like 3 hours, and they start going to the dining hall, they eat more protein, they start to pack on a decent amount of muscle. And I think that in and of itself, working out, yeah, good, be healthy. But it comes down to this idea that like, I'm not going to be able to look myself in the mirror and accept what I see until I'm at a certain point to where I look at what I see and I like what I see. And like, that can be really harmful, and also not compared to what progress you've made, but how you are comparing yourself to somebody who is further along in their journey. And so what happens is, when you go to a weight room that's not in a college setting, you see the entire spectrum of people. You see like 70-year-old dudes who like, I don't know, just are going to like walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes and like
and you see
always end up changing right in front of you in the locker room. Or like the guys who are like super into it, or like the people who are overweight. And I mean, it depends on what gym you go to, but my point is that if you compare yourself on a sliding scale of, I need to be elite, I need to be elite in school, I need to be elite in my body, what happens in college is like all the meatheads gather at the gym, and then there's a bunch of scrawny freshmen who are like trying to measure up to this impossible standard. And those guys probably have no other hobbies besides lifting, and are probably on roids. And so the little guys go home and they take their creatine and their protein powder, and like, yeah, maybe by junior year they're like ripped or something. But it's like, was that worth like 3 years of like self-criticism and like body shaming yourself because you like can't really like accept the fact that like you weren't given the genetics that Brad, Chad, and Thad down the locker room were like flexing their muscles, you know?
Yeah. And it's a really slippery slope too. I was watching a documentary called Generation Wealth, and it focused on like how money like pervades our society and it perverts our society.
Yeah.
Especially like with how we view our bodies, but especially how women view their bodies. And like, I don't know if it's more women than more men, but it hurts women very deeply. And so they were looking
a certain
at
like value that they associate,
right? Because they're supposed to be, Anyway, but they were looking at anorexia survivors, and like some of the testimonies that they gave were just like these people who went to the hospital because they were so low on weight and they needed like injections of the vitamins and minerals, And the girl gave her testimony saying, like, at first it was 5 pounds, but then as it got worse, the number didn't matter. I would always look in the mirror, and myself was never good enough. Like, myself was the problem.
Right.
And so that mentality, to a lesser extent, unless of course you develop an eating disorder. But that mentality can affect us when we take this self-pity and we just like live it out. And especially at the gym, God, there's a lot of meatheads there. You go there and every guy is walking on those chicken legs, and they got their their
boulder
chests
shoulders
puffed out. And every girl's got the Lululemon leggings and has that, trimmed waist.
Black Nike hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, it's terrible to go there to look at, who do I want to be?
Yeah.
And like,
and it's hard not to buy into it too.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
Because they look happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and so like, it's a super slippery slope. And so you could be any size. You could gain any amount of weight. You could gain any amount of muscle. You could bench press 400 pounds and squat 600 and still look in the mirror. And
but if you haven't addressed the internal like concept of self, then you have not really made any progress.
And that's where I want to get to choosing our own attitudes. I think that's a really important piece of the whole self-love, self-pity debate. It's an attitude change.
Yeah.
In the like in certain anonymous programs like SA, NA, AA, they'll talk about attitudes.
Yeah.
And they'll say like, what happened to you, like the addiction that you developed, that was circumstantial. What caused that? You were the cause at every single step of the addiction.
Yeah, that's hard to own up
because of a change in attitude.
Yeah.
At the beginning, you said, no, this was a line I'd never cross. And you changed your attitude to think, this is something I could do.
Yeah.
And so with turning from self-pity to self-love, or developing an image of yourself that you're comfortable with addressing in the mirror every morning, it's a change in attitude.
Yeah.
And it's a series of a change in attitudes. You don't obviously just go into the mirror and say, I love myself now. And like everything's better.
That's
but that's how it starts.
That's what's so frustrating about like what the cultural antidote
the pop psychology,
because they're just like, well, just love yourself. It's like
accept yourself,
love yourself. Yeah. It's like this idea that if you just want it more, then like things will work out, and it's just such a band-aid to like a.
And this is it's especially poisonous when they try and put it under our control, because then we think this is something that's within my power. And not only do I lack it, but when I try to seek it, I can't grasp it still.
Yeah.
Meaning, something within me is broken.
Yeah.
And it's more ammunition to hit yourself with. And so the true, like, resolution to changing your attitudes, to turning from self-pity to self-love, in my perspective and in my humble opinion, not very humble, but
my proud, confident
in my
opinion.
super brain opinion, is that it's turning to God in every single moment that you feel something, and asking him for the grace,
good or bad,
asking him for the change in attitude. And so I love the prayer that Jesus says right before in the Garden of Gethsemane. When he says like, I'm saddened unto death, and he says, Lord, thy will be done, not my will. And those are just such powerful meaning is conveyed in those words, because when you're feeling the insecurities, when you're feeling the self-hatred, when you're looking in the mirror and saying, I don't really like that guy who's looking back at me, the only person who can take you out of that, psychology can help, the counselors can help, medicine can help, but the only person who can take you out of that is God.
Yeah. And
you taking the first change in attitude to say, I surrender, like I can't do this, and turning to God and asking for his help. Like that's just absolutely crucial. You cannot love yourself unless you ask God to give it to you.
This last summer, as I was fundraising for my mission work with Focus, I had a conversation with my uncle, very similar to what you're describing, saying that he's a teacher in Omaha, and he sees a lot of different young people go through kind of their developmental phases and whatnot, and so he'll teach like AP biology and regular biology, so he'll see like freshmen and seniors. And one thing he said was that people have such a high expectation of how their life is to turn out perfectly, And the minute that, so essentially like perfectionism is breathed into like the culture right now, but you just see such immense growth when you see the difference between somebody who is holding on so tightly to the way they want things to turn out versus somebody who realizes that life is not about them. That life isn't this huge pressure and like needing to do everything perfectly. And once you let go of that and you're able to enter into something greater than yourself. And this happens with things other than God, but like ideally it's God because he's the source of communion itself.
Yeah.
But when we let go and we become part of something that restores our identity as sons and daughters, we start to just like not let those things bother us. Because it's like, yeah, I don't have like the perfect pecs. Or like, yeah, I don't tell the funniest jokes. Or you're right, sometimes I wasn't there for you in the way that I should have been. That's okay, because, you know, I'm trying, and I am willing enough to accept the fact that, yeah, I'm not perfect. And it doesn't mean I can't try. Because I think that's kind of like the distinction there between like what the culture is saying.
Yeah.
Is because it's like you could put in zero effort and you deserve like some what's the word? Recognition or I'm trying to think of the word entitlement.
Oh yeah.
Like you're entitled to a certain respect, which is true. But it's almost completely diametric to the idea that society is competition based. It's like you still have to put in the effort to like make sure that you're taking care of yourself. You still have to like understand that like there is a deeply held hierarchy within just the way that like society has always been set up, that like you are a part of and have a responsibility to. And I think that's the part that's the most frustrating, is that it's like, love yourself, and it's like, okay, but like how do you like integrate loving yourself with the people who are also on Instagram saying like rise and grind, like it's time to like build my empire and like be a part of this like ridiculous like almost like caste system of like entrepreneurship. Because like both of those things have elements of truth in them, of like when you wake up and you're disciplined enough to like chase after your goals, a lot of times life does reward you for that, but it's not like your identity. And in the same vein, like when you decide that you're gonna go all in on like the, you know, Meghan Trainor movement or Lizzo or whatever that you want to self-love type of ideology, it's like it's hollow because it's not based in reality. It's based on like just kind of fluff
ideology.
But it's just
that's what, because you know, all the priests tell us that you know, Satan only works in perversions of the truth. Like he's never original enough to make his own lie, and so we get these two equally good options for self-motivation and self-love, and he just like twists them ever so slightly. That total commitment to them and nothing else leads us to hell.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
something I used to like that something that like helps me with, you know, kind of this like pressure that you feel when you want to do something good or something great or something that takes a lot of time with. Before I kind of came to God, and before we kind of became best friends, what am I trying to say? Anyways, I'm gonna cry. Well, I had this pressure on me. It almost felt like a mountain on top of my shoulders, or I was standing right at the base of a mountain, and that all kind of changed when I realized that every single day and every single hour is a gift from God. So it's up to you how you decide to deal with that, but nothing really matters besides that time that you're given, right? Because a freak accident can happen. You can get really sick. But when you realize that God calls you, and He calls you, and He wants you to be close with Him, and you can feel it, and usually it's in other people, because you can sense that Jesus is in a lot of other people. You start to attack the day more, and you start being more happy, because it's like, oh my goodness, look how wonderful life is, because I get to experience with my brothers and sisters the love of God, and that, my time here is short, and I get to spend it with wonderful people.
Yeah. So. It's like you get so many utils. And there's a currency of like, I have this much willpower today, and like at the end of the day, how am I going to like use this time that God's given me on this planet? And for me in particular, I think another thing you're alluding to was that when we kind of had like, we lust over certain status, or we lust over a certain like, oh, if I only had this project, if I had this job, if I had this thing, it gets just like super restless.
Oh yeah.
Because you A, aren't really discerning like what your purpose is. You're just doing stuff. And B, whatever next shiny object comes your way is going to throw you off the path, because you never really had like deep connection to like the work you were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like say that, because like I've been doing mission for 9 months now, and it's been really hard to just like hold all of the thoughts of like career and hobbies and all these things at bay, because my brain just naturally does worry about the future. And like it's this like psychological catch-22 where it's like, you're fine but also not, because it's like you do have to do something when you're done with this, but you also are kind of expected to enter in fully into the job you have right now, although it's temporary. So folks, missionaries are called to work for 2 years. That's what we agree to. But it's really interesting how it's been impacting me, because there is a natural tendency for us to just worry about the future. I have this like list of like 7 things that I could do. It's like, this week I'm a real estate agent. Like, I want to sell houses. Next week I'm like, I want to raise money for the church. I want to like I want to do sales for like Jesus. And then it's not purely that, but or like, this week I'm going to be a CPA, or like I'm going to secure my future. And it's like, how about you just like focus on being a son, and like focus on, don't worry about the titles, don't worry about like the future, don't worry about money. Focus on your identity, like as a son of God. Like you've been given this time. You've been given this time today. You've been given this time on this earth to glorify God. And like, I'm so happy for the experience that I have had, because a lot of times that this is like an extended version of a super extended version of a retreat. It's like, if you sit in a room by yourself and think of, and you let your brain come out with all of its best ideas, and you realize like, is that it? It's like, sometimes it takes that like drawing out of you, like going on a weekend retreat, or like to let all of the activity settle, to realize that you could have chased down this entire path of just chasing the next thing, until you realize that like there was nothing at the other side. It was just one big like treadmill, kind of. And so like it is so important to like restore our identity in Christ, which leads me to our next point. How does in the Catholic Church, how does the Eucharist play into this idea of self-love?
I have some thoughts on that, because I think it's like integral. Like, it's like almost right there next to it is like Father Matt says a lot, Father Matt's our parish priest, by the way, but like how can you love other people if you don't love yourself? Like, how can you give what you don't have? But then how can you love yourself if you don't let God give it to you? How are you going to give anything if you don't receive it from the one who gives? And so, it's very, very difficult. But there was something one of my friends told me, and she said that, yeah, self-acceptance is what leads to self-forgiveness, and self-forgiveness is what leads to self-love. And so it's you know, the first step of it isn't saying, all right, God, help me love myself. It's saying, God, help me to look in the mirror and say, yeah, this is what I did. And then you can move on and say, I forgive you for that. And then you can move on and say, I love you despite that. And
right.
I think that's...
And it starts with that attitude change.
The attitude change.
Yeah.
They talk about it in the DBT stuff, and they call it radical acceptance, is looking at the moment as it is without any judgmental values attached to it. Because sometimes we have thoughts, and they have incredible values attached to them.
Right.
Is sometimes, you know, look in the mirror and think, I'm fat.
That's bad.
I'm worthless too.
Yeah.
And those just go together, one and the same. And being able
we don't
to
even realize that that's like two
different thoughts.
Yeah, two different strains of like...
And so radical acceptance kind of works in the strain of like being able to tear those judgments apart from the thoughts and just being able to say, I had a thought that I am fat, and then leaving it with at that.
Yeah.
And that kind of plays into the self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the Eucharist helps that, sorry.
No, yeah, definitely. I wasn't trying to butt over you. And like kind of like a sense of gratitude too that you were talking about, of like 6 a.m. what am I gonna do to like glorify God today, or like just give back to my community, or I really like that though, of thinking that without being able to accept ourselves, how can we love others? I want to talk about some of the most common lies that I think males in particular hear on a daily basis, and they are, I'm alone, or like, I'm lonely. That's the first one. Second one, I'm a failure. And then, I'm not enough. Who I am right now is not enough. So like loneliness, failure, and adequacy, if you want to like summarize that. And so when we receive the Eucharist, or when we pray, or when we go to adoration, obviously Eucharist is the highest form of like, we believe that we receive Jesus physically into our bodies, into an exchange of persons, meaning that he's penetrating exactly who we are and vice versa, and it's this exchange. Those lies are shattered when we receive the Eucharist, because we are in a pretty like very obvious way becoming part of God, and God is becoming part of us. And he constantly wants that level of intimacy and communion with us, but we are not always in a state on our side. His love is always trying to reach us. On our side, we are not always able to realize that he's there because of whatever is going on our side of things. And so it's almost an invitation to just put ourselves in a place to be found by God, rather than trying to do this on our own.
Right, yeah. Because
all we can... Father Matt always says, is it our job to fix ourselves? He always like kind of stutters his question so that for dramatic effect. Is it our job to fix ourselves? And
yeah,
it's not our job.
It's not our job.
Yeah. It presupposes effort, meaning you do have to try.
Yeah.
But can we heal ourselves? No.
But I think just as Satan plays at half-truths at other things, he prods at our pride and he prods at our strength as men, because we suppose ourselves to have pride and strength.
Yeah.
And he's like, you should be able to do that.
Yeah.
You should be able. And so like...
The enterprising, aggressive parts of men are often taken advantage of by Satan because they think that they can do it, or they think that they deserve it, or they think that they have some ownership to something that they don't. And that's the exact perversion of like shamar, like the Hebrew word shamar in the Bible, like Adam shamarred the garden, meaning he protected and kind of like had his little kingdom. But like the perversion of shamar is this aggressiveness, this like arrogance.
The world and all her dominion belongeth to Monsignor. You know.
But yeah, the lies of I'm alone, I'm a failure, I'm not enough, are oftentimes the questions, the lies that we hear in those little moments, whether it's in front of the mirror, whether it's looking at our grade report, whether it's looking at our Instagram feed of like when you go and you look at your own Instagram feed and you just like go through, it's like, man, what an average life I'm living. Or like, my gram is not up to par. Or like, I'm gonna go work on the gram, so I'm gonna go to like travel to Hawaii and take some pics. Like, it's just like, it doesn't. Another vacation or like another thing is not going to solve this very
God hunger.
The emptiness you feel.
Yeah, it's like it's gonna take a mindset shift and an acceptance of like God into your life, because you can't really begin to start healing from the past and from like these lies until you realize your true worth, which is a creature in God's kingdom. Like we like that beautiful prayer of like, I am small and like God is large. And like I want to do something great with my life, but it's not, there's no pressure. It's like I can just enter into the ordinary. I can enter into like his love, like every single moment of the day, and from that place, I'm able to be confident. I'm able to go to the weight room and like see those guys and be like, whatever, Chad. Whatever, Chad. You like,
yeah.
You know, it's like it just like deflects off of you because you have this like fortified version of this new identity that is constantly reinforced with prayer and scripture. So that was kind of my 2 cents on that.
It's a good 2 cents.
It's almost like an Uno reverse card. You know, they'll say like, "Oh, your gains are so small." Yeah, but I'm doing God's work, and I'm working hard for myself. And then it's like deflection.
Yeah.
I think especially
we were playing Fidel. I don't want to cast any shade if that's your frat, but we were playing Fidel in floor hockey.
Oh yeah.
And we have these couple guys on our team, and I'll admit they are like, you know, a little baby face-ish, but they were calling him like, "Oh my gosh, like look at that 10-year-old boy out there," or like saying just absurd stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, like get a life.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Which is why a PSA from Daniel West through the Beatidudes. If you're in a fraternity, please drop. Just get out as fast as you can. Nothing fruitful comes from a fraternity except for community service to public roads.
To public roads. Except the Catholic fraternity.
Yeah,
I was in the Catholic fraternity.
except for the Knights of Columbus.
Yeah.
And the other one.
So our last topic I want to move into was anyway. We don't want to. Okay. If you're in a fraternity, there is good that you can do. It's just, on the whole, it just seems like a lot of debauchery.
Iron sharpens iron, brother.
But
iron also dulls iron. You gotta surround yourself with sharp iron.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
They don't talk about that in the Bible.
In the Bible?
You gotta come to the Beatitudes podcast.
We're releasing Bible 2 this spring.
Heresy? Who knows?
Sorry, you were saying?
I wasn't saying anything.
Bible 2. Last topic. So I just finished reading the book Boundaries, which is kind of a classic Father Matt book title.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, you know, I don't know if this is your experience on your campus or wherever you're listening to this. It's like you see the Boundaries book, and it's got the pencil on it, and it's got the line down the middle, and you're like, ah, yes, that book for people who can't say no to things and are people pleasers. And you're like,
surely not I, Lord.
yeah. You're like, I could probably read that. That'd be good for me. And you just kind of like write it off a little bit. You're just like, okay, say no to too many. Say no to people when you don't actually want to do the thing they're asking, and show up to stuff on time. Like, easy boundaries. But like, the book systematically works through every relationship that people have. So boundaries in your family, boundaries in a marriage, boundaries with God, boundaries with yourself, boundaries with this, and gives you a step-by-step framework for how to give yourself the respect that you deserve. And one of the topics is boundaries with self. So if you haven't read Boundaries, total game changer for me. Psychological, probably like best self-help book I've ever read. And what does it mean to have boundaries with yourself? One of the things they talked about is when you're walking through your house and you have free time and you see your laptop and you're like, oh man, I need to write that paper. And you sit down and you write your paper for like 15 minutes. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go walk to the fridge, get some food. On the way to the fridge, you see your guitar. And you're like, oh man, I really want to get better at guitar. I'm going to sit down and play guitar for 15 minutes. And then you do that and you get up and you're like, okay, I got to go to the bathroom. And then maybe you see like a book in the bathroom and you're like, man, I really like start reading that book. So you start reading Boundaries. And then, and then you're just like going throughout your day and it's just all impulse.
Oh, yeah.
And in a sense, it's like a boundary is the ability to say no to something, and you can have boundaries within yourself saying, I'm going to commit to living order and I'm going to commit to living a schedule. So if it's not something that I'm going to sit down and do for an hour, like I'm not going to do it. I'm going to commit time to do the things that are important to me, not just kind of like haphazardly fall into whatever activity. And this also goes for, I know we keep hitting this theme of like looking in the mirror, but having boundaries with yourself can also involve saying no to your thought patterns, because certain thought patterns are also impulse driven. They just kind of come out of you. But when they do happen, you can make rules for yourself. So if you preemptively write down on a piece of paper of like, I'm not going to have negative self-talk when I'm in front of the mirror. You know, like you're looking at whatever, you're trying to like measure your gains and you're like, oh man, I just want to, you're like, nope, I'm just going to accept who I am. I think that being healthy is important, and I like want to have a good body image, but I'm not going to make my happiness dependent on it. And then whatever that means for you, like however you are going to remind yourself of that sonship and that identity, that's up to you, like to figure out whatever you're going to write on your piece of paper. But for me, it's like I have a set of 5 goals that I want to achieve in 2020. I want to get out of debt. I want to create music on a live stage and maybe record like 4 or 5 songs. I want to read 10 to 25 pages a day, and by the end of the year feel like I'm an expert at reading and asking questions. And I think that's 3, right? Mm-hmm. I don't remember the other 2, but it's like you write down 5 goals, and at the bottom of that you write your 5 core values. And for me, it's like I'm a son of God, and I will pursue others like joyfully. That's like the first core value, and you kind of work through like whatever those 5 core values are. And so when you really take the time to whatever the format is, there's plenty of like templates online you can look at for like what you want your goals to be for the year. But if you really sit down and you decide like, I'm going to commit to this idea that this is what's important to me this year, and like these are the things I want to accomplish, you start to, like we were saying, when these thoughts come up to us, since we've done the boundary work up front of like, this is what's important to me, this is the ideal, this is the religion, this is whatever I've committed to, the boundaries are there in place. So when the devil comes and tries to throw you off of the horse, it just bounces right off, because you're like, no, I'm not going to give in to that, because that does not support where I'm going. It doesn't support my sonship. It doesn't support like my happiness, and I'm able to do that because I have clarity about where I'm going. And it takes a while to get to that spot, but it's so worth the groundwork that you lay in whatever first weeks of the year. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I didn't think you could set boundaries within yourself because, I used to think that you're trapped in your own mind, but I figured out that if you have a thought and it doesn't, display who you are as a person, you can say no to that thought.
No, the boundaries with self is a really helpful thing too, for me. Because you can't. You're the captain of your soul. So you should. Not should. I want to be the kind of person who can tell myself no. So,
yeah. I don't know. I just think I'm a pretty impulsive person, so it's been it's been a big game changer for me this year, because it's like I'm very task based, and I would like to be more schedule based, because the schedule is what allows you to compound and work towards goals that are bigger than just what I feel today.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of that.
It's almost like when you're focused on a schedule, your work, if it's daily, it'll compound, and when you're task based, you'll get certain things done, but you'll never kind of be proud of that, completion of a task.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that concludes this episode of the Beatidudes. Join us next week for Bible 2.
Bible 2? No. We're not releasing another Bible.
There's only one Bible.
Yeah.
Fine. We won't make a second Bible. Alright.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for joining us, Topher.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yes.
Music by Sro, taken off of Free Music Archive.